I now take Waymo driverless rides in San Francisco and Los Angeles instead of human-driven Ubers. My car has FSD, and 9 times out of 10 or more, it can take me curb to curb without a single intervention. So self-driving's here. We actually figured out how to do it. How do we do it? A phase of self-driving's over. This doesn't mean we've actually executed self-driving cars scaling across the country, but from a tech perspective, we have the tools to do it and to do it successfully now. So there's no self-driving cars in Manhattan, for example, yet, but it's only a matter of time at this point. So now we're in the scaling phase. And I think what people are going to realize is Tesla is the only company that's equipped to make millions of these things. They're the only company that has a cost structure to do it. Google, which owns Waymo, is maybe the other potential play, but Waymo is a tiny part of their monster search business, which is going through antitrust and other concerns. It's not necessarily a pure play on AI and autonomy the way Tesla is. So I think more and more investors are taking a look and realizing that.
Totally. If I can add to that, I was listening to Jeff and Herbert's conversation today on YouTube, and it came to me, and most of you probably came to the same realization, was that Tesla went through the growth of vehicles in figuring out how to mass produce cars that are far superior than everything else on the market. Sorry, my youngest is starting to play piano. And it's interesting to see a lot of the analysts on Wall Street, because that's kind of my world, talk about, margins, auto gross margins, and how are we going to get back to 25, 30% auto gross margins. And Tesla is not even talking about that anymore. They are talking, and their direction is, we've already figured out how to make a better product, which is the vehicle, safer, faster, more fun, more cool, all the reasons. And now we're moving on to the next step. And we're going to continue to scale our production in terms of vehicle manufacturing. But now we're on to autonomy. And in my 2 cents is that autonomy is the next level up. And obviously, Optimus is going to be the next. But they're not. I've noticed a shift in terms of Tesla's focus, and the machine that builds their machine, as Elon would say, is already in motion, and they're making cars better than everyone else at a profit better than everyone else, and they're set it and forget it, and they're suivant, move on next. That's kind of my thought right now, and it was after listening to Jeff's talk today, I was like, holy shit, they're not even focused on production anymore. They're just focused on autonomy, and it's pretty much solved. It's like next level good, and the next level, which would be like robots, and yeah.
Thanks. I mean, the point I was making in our video today, I think, was around when you look at Tesla and you look at Legacy has to make a jump. Right now, Legacy today cannot produce a profitable EV. Now, maybe there's something going on in BMW as they're ramping up. We'll see. But just in general, like for the majority of Legacy, they can't produce a profit. So they have to make that jump to producing a profitable EV. While they're making that jump, the way Tesla approached it was through mass vertical integration of engineering resources and supply chain. So you're not parsing out these margins for engineering services and for components and logistics. You brought it all under one roof, and Tesla had to do that because the supply base really didn't exist, and they would have never gotten to break even and eventually profitable by parsing this out to suppliers. So the macro point was legacy has to make multiple jumps to get to where Tesla is today. They not only have to get to the drawing board and figure out how to produce a design that's simple and profitable, but they also have to change how they engineer products. They have to change how they build their supply chains. And these are not things you do in one product generation. It takes multiple product generations to make those jumps. And then finally, by the time they've made that jump, Tesla will be at mass scale on autonomy. And that was kind of the macro point. Well, Tesla will make this kind of escape velocity jump to, we figured that out years ago, but now we're into our whole gross margin structure has changed because we're on to autonomy everything. So that was kind of the point.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff, it's so funny. I was reading Automotive News, which is a major automotive trade publication. They said new Audi Q5 with upgraded driver assistance features. I said, oh, okay, let's see what the latest upgraded driver assistance Audi has. And I read the article and they go, adaptive cruise control. That's the headlining feature of their new upgraded driver assistance. Adaptive cruise control, not even lane keeping, adaptive cruise control, which comes free on every Tesla. It's an optional package on the Audi. And then here's the kicker. They say coming to the US summer 2025. My jaw was on the floor. Here's my Tesla doing entire drives curb to curb and driving me out without a driver. And next year, so imagine what the Tesla's going to be doing next year. And next year, they're putting out a car with optional adaptive cruise control. What we're really seeing here is something that was not an important feature to consumers is going to become, I believe, the most important feature in deciding a car. So if you look at like these features today, lane keeping assist and forward collision warning and these types of safety features, they don't provide a ton of usefulness to people. Consumers often turn them off because they annoy them. They're going off, having a false positive braking or forward collision warning, and they just turn them off. That's how bad they are. Now, as it gets good enough to drive your car, I think this will actually be the single most important factor when people look for what type of car they want to get in. And that's going to be a huge upset to the companies like the legacy automakers that have been focusing on everything except that and have been totally failing in their own efforts to become software companies like Cariad in the case of Audi.
Yeah, it's really kind of articulating how big of a jump is needed, and then the fact that you really can't take everything you see at face value and say, oh, well, Mercedes, they're filing for level 4. That means they must be ahead. You've really got to, there's a thing in the industry, like especially like in quality management, called drill deep and drill wide, where you're really supposed to. Yeah, there's a systemic way of trying to understanding the scope of the problem and the resolution. And when you look at these kind of systems, you've really got to have to have a broad perspective. It can't just be a few second video clip of something. You really have to understand the scope of it in terms of its cost structure, its ability to scale geographically, its ability to scale from a cost structure perspective. Like there's so many factors to understand. And it'd be great if there were more analysts in the world that were, sitting down, pencil to paper, and really kind of articulating this case and putting it out there. We see snippets of it from Morgan Stanley and other places, but right now you have traditional auto analysts, and then you really don't have the kind of the right coverage yet in terms of these people that are kind of high profile and out there. So yeah, there's significant jumps that are needed, and we saw kind of a similar thing happen in the smartphone industry in terms of everybody kind of catching up on hardware and everybody making great software, but then on the services and app store side, that's where the customer acquisition was happening. That's where the margin was moving to, and so yeah, there could be a lot of similarities with this.
I think about a year ago, Jeff, was the time that Elon Musk drove or published the net, he called it, while he was driving and looking for some addresses throughout California. But what was interesting, and I talked about it to clients at the time, and I said, people are going to remember this moment as the time that FSD became end-to-end neural net, and also an opportunity where we're having artificial intelligence that's actually driving the car instead of coding. So we're a year into it, and people aren't still. When I say people, like Wall Street's not tuning into it, but I also what. And I'm not obsessed with you, Jeff, you or Herbert, but you guys also did another interesting video a day or two ago, and you talked about the Apple event, and it was probably the most, I would say, the most transformational event in our time in terms of a new technology that is being published, and that was the Apple event and the introduction of the iPhone. And I thought about it because I watched it from an investor standpoint, and we were managing client assets at the time. And it was pretty significant. I was impressed with it, but it did nothing to Apple stock. And I'm telling you, if you look back over the next 2 or 3 years, people didn't fully understand or comprehend how significant it was. Yet it was probably one of the most revolutionary products of our generation up until now. And so it kind of reminded me when I was watching that talk that you gave to Elon Musk driving through California using just neural net, nothing but net, as he would say. And I said, holy shit, this is something different, and we're going to remember this moment for a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you're seeing really like an intense amount of negativity. And Elon had a really interesting tweet yesterday where he tweeted out the S&P Global Mobility study that said Tesla has the highest brand loyalty out of any brand in the auto industry. And he said great products result in great brands. And you've seen so much of this just like crazy, exaggerated catastrophe. Oh my God, it's the end of Tesla. Elon Musk is tweeting and all his customers are abandoning his brands. But S&P Global Mobility looked at the registration data. Customer loyalty was virtually unchanged. And why is that? Well, maybe customers would switch more or be more offended if there was another car they could get that's like a Tesla. But when you have one car brand that can come and pick you up driverlessly in a parking lot, that can take you from point to point, when you have a product that's 10 times better, that's what makes people love the brand. It's not what you say, it's not what your ads look like, it's what the product actually is. And at this point, when everybody is screaming that the sky is falling and Elon's destroying the company, you need to boycott it. I mean, they're putting out cars with 4680 cells made in Texas with dry anodes and cathodes. They're building supercomputing clusters. They're making massive leaps in FSD with end to end. And as much as people want to ignore it, eventually you're going to see it in the bottom line.
Omar, you said something that resonated with me was when you somehow get access miraculously to the latest versions of FSD, and you've got it on your Model 3 and your Cybertruck.
I'm in the early access program. So Tesla has an early access program that they've maintained for at least 5 years. They've been doing
Right.
it. And this is a way for them to send software updates out to certain people, test it out, get feedback before it goes to the broader fleet.
I'm supposed to have, well, I'm in Canada, so it's a bit different, but I'm supposed to be a beta tester up in Canada, but hasn't been 5 years. I think it's been 3. But what I'm more referring to is the fact that you do get the latest software. and you had a new Cybertruck and a Model 3, and the Model 3 had the FSD. And what was interesting was that your take was, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but it was the fact that you love driving the Cybertruck. It didn't have FSD and it didn't drive itself. So many times for any long drive, you said, I can't take this because I love having that technology. And most most people can and so I listened to that and I thought, wow, actually I can relate to that. And my wife has a new Rivian. It's a cool car to take off roading. But and I have a Model X that has software 3 and it's 12.3. And then I have a Model S that has 12.5. And I'm telling you, the only car I want to take anywhere is the 12.5 Model S because the technology is that good. And I look for any excuse to drive it. My wife says, hey, let's go to Costco. What do you want to take? The Rivian, which is new, the Model S, which is new. And I'm like, we're taking the Model S. I just like having a car that can drive itself whenever I want it to, and I don't have to worry about it. So I'm having the same experience as you, but I think you've articulated it well that eventually the consumer is going to come to this realization that if you have a car that doesn't drive itself, you don't want to drive it.
Yeah. I mean, this latest version is getting to the point where it actually drives better than you. It makes fewer mistakes, fewer wrong turns than you do. It's smoother and more comfortable than you are. It doesn't get confused about which way to go as often. So it really is addictive. I think once consumers get used to it, any brand that doesn't have it is going to be excluded. And it's really exciting to see Hyundai put a native NACS port into their cars today. It's going to be great to see more brands putting NACS ports directly into their cars. And I had talked about an idea before, and Elon commented and agreed about using this NACS partnership as a springboard to license FSD. So, say, for example, hey, if you want to integrate FSD and NACS, then maybe you get a preferred rate at the supercharger, same rate the Teslas get, or something like that. And we'll give you the FSD hardware at cost. And if you can sort of create a domino effect there, just like you did in the NACS port, well, that's worth several times more than even these supercharger deals.
Yeah, it's something we could probably do a whole show on. Just the their their ability to leverage their fixed cost infrastructure in terms of supercharging, in terms of eventually insurance, and now in terms of FSD, and the ability to be able to play those things off of each other and bundle, where almost like the more subs that Tesla gets to that, it lowers their cost structure, and then it lowers the cost structure for the consumer. They're going to have access to things that others don't have access to, but they're making it open, like they're doing it in an open way, like they opened the charger network. So it's not like anybody can really come after them and say, hey, this is all anti-competitive. It's more like, hey, we opened it up and we're not taking a margin. But this whole, it's not widely discussed, but just their ability to be able to leverage this is going to be a big deal. I think everybody right now is focused on, like, how many cars are they going to ship, and kind of what's the progress with FSD and the robotaxi event. But I see this bundling thing out there. I saw what it did for me on insurance, where it basically negated my cost of FSD in my situation. Maybe other situations are going to be different. And then I can see what Tesla can do with supercharging and bundling that and the rates. And all of a sudden, when you think of you have to buy a car, you have to fuel it, you have to insure it, and you want it to be the safest. And then you start wrapping this whole story together, and it's honestly, it's going to get you the lowest cost probably at day one, and then through its lifetime. And there's a real story here with this whole bundling thing. It's only going to be more kind of progressive and bigger as time goes on.
Jeff, I
Yeah,
have
and I
a
love the
question.
supercharging bundle. They call it the Drive Anywhere package. So you get unlimited supercharging for 3 years plus unlimited FSD. lets them keep most of the optionality of when it's full autonomous. They're only selling the next 3 years, and they're bundling in the supercharging services as well. If we see more of this and expand across the lineup, it could really start bringing up ASPs in a material way.
Jeff, does the question for you, and does the hardware, so hardware, let's say hardware 4 or hardware 5, in your opinion, does it have to be on, and I thought that this is the case, you would have to have Tesla hardware on an OEM vehicle in order for it to work efficiently? So if that's the case, I'm not thinking, well, that's not a good thing because none of these cars have that. I'm thinking this is huge because now they could be a manufacturer of hardware, tech hardware, for all vehicles that need or want FSD. What are your thoughts?
The prohibitive cost of the hardware is going to approach zero relative to the cost that they would claw in terms of software and services margin. And so that you could when you're basically you have the ability eventually. I mean, again, this is like in the future, but now instead of bundling across the product you sell, you are actually you have the ability now to start bundling across the industry of products. So yeah, they would have to buy, they would have to do development work with Tesla. There'd be, Tesla would have a development kit. They would have a group of people that work with these companies to do integration and to bring it up and live. And then Tesla could sell a number of different things under a number of different models to the OEMs, and then the OEMs can turn around and then sell it to their consumers at some price point that they deem profitable or helpful for them. And Tesla, gets it. But I think in the bigger picture, the hardware side of it is small. And the reason the hardware side of it is small is because of the system design that Tesla's actually come up with. It's not, $10,000 or $15,000 for their computer vision self-driving capability. I estimate it's somewhere in the 1,000 to maybe 1,500 range, and over time and with volume, that's going to continue, and with die shrinks and them continuing to improve upon hardware, that's going to continue to come down. So that's going to be the hardware portion of it, and the sales of hardware, I think, is a really small thing. The bigger thing is this subscription and lifetime services of full self-driving, and maybe bundling charging, and even bundling maybe even insurance eventually.
Yeah, I wasn't. Okay, thank you for that. I wasn't thinking of profitability in terms of the hardware. I was thinking of moats to entry. And yeah, I recognize maybe it's $1,000, $2,000, and the money's on the software. But if indeed it is, eventually it becomes a moat to entry that you need your car to have that hardware, first and foremost, and secondly, it makes it very difficult or next to impossible for other OEMs to be able to offer this sort of thing and just say, well, we're going to buy a Google software, because you actually need the hardware that is programmed with the software in order to do that. So it just adds more moats to entry, which is a good thing from an investment standpoint.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the priority for Tesla is getting it up and running on their fleet. The North America is the trial ground to go from supervised to unsupervised, but in the background they're trying to get supervised, obviously, to go across more geographies for Tesla, and that's obviously the priority. But Elon has said that they've started licensing discussions. I think that's wholly appropriate. And with the advancements and improvements they're making, this is why you see these CEOs, if they're not U.S. based, they're flying to America, and they're buying Teslas, they're driving them themselves, they're making it kind of a public event. Everybody wants to see what's going on and where the competition is, and they know Tesla's a low cost leader. Even Li Auto in China even commented on Tesla's hardware approach for autonomy and being a cost leader. So yeah, I think there's a lot more happening in the background than we'll ever know. And like I said, I've been calling for this. It hasn't happened, but I think them licensing FSD has to be fairly imminent, and it's almost existential, for all these car companies, where they're at. They have to look at where they're at today. I mean, you can poke holes at where Tesla FSD is, and it's not perfect and so forth, but you have to look at where it is and how it scales, both in performance, how it scales geographically, and then how in volume, and then how it scales economically. And then if you're a car manufacturer, you have to look at, okay, this is what I'm working on today, and this is how it scales from a performance perspective, and this is how it scales from a geographically, and this is how it scales economically. And you have to say, all right, I'm going to put a line graph. I'm going to say, where am I going to be in 2025? Where am I going to be in 2026? And where's the Tesla solution? And how much R&D am I going to burn over that same time period? And where do I think I'm going to get? So at some point, that these companies have to cut and run. What you've seen the last couple of years, you've seen Ford shut down or Argo AI. You've seen some of the efforts at Uber get shut down. The internal efforts get shut down. And you've seen these, and you saw what happened. Obviously, GM has really cut down with Cruise. So these are the decisions that these companies toil with, and they have to make these investment decisions. But the point I'm trying to make is they look at both their burn rate of like what it's going to cost them, and do they think they're going to hit the mark in some period of time?
Yeah.
I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, it made sense. I think really what the market has not absorbed yet, yeah, they really think that Waymo is the leader, but I've tried every self-driving system on the market. I've tried Super Cruise, Blue's Clues, FSD, Waymo, Cruise, everything that's publicly available. Not only has Tesla created a self-driving system that is a fraction of the cost of anybody else. We're talking you could make 4 or 5 self-driving cars for the price of one of their cars. Um, it actually drives better. So it's profitable. It's a fraction of the cost, yet somehow it actually drives better than the car with all the hardware. So this is a pretty astounding achievement. It's often difficult to look at these systems and tell the difference. They all look like they're doing the same thing. But in terms of making it work as a business, there are many different EVs around the world. But here we are, 7 years after the launch of the Model 3. How many other profitable EV businesses are there in the world? All of the legacy automakers are losing money. All of the EV startups are still losing money. Tesla remains exceptional in its ability to actually make money selling millions of EVs. And you see so much of the same situation in autonomy. We know this technology works now. Who's going to turn it into a business? Because so far, no one's been able to turn it into a business. They've been able to demonstrate that it works, burn billions of dollars in the process. But who's going to dominate the market around the world and make money on it? And I think people really don't want to admit how far ahead they're becoming. For whatever reason, they don't want to give them credit for it. But it's going to be hard to ignore. If you're an automaker that wants to license this, and they've said they're talking to at least two, there's nothing else with this cost structure that works in the US, works in Europe, and works in China without requiring pre-mapping of any of those areas. It's an incredibly differentiated product. There's really nothing else quite like it on the market, which people don't really appreciate. They think it's just the same as a number of other systems. When you look under the hood at how it works, it's like nothing else that exists in the world.
And then you have to take that into account, and you have to look at the investments Tesla's making with the Tesla cluster, and the amount of spend Elon's talking about now, with the H200s, and you have to look at what they're doing, and then you have to look at the other people that are trying to make cars that drive themselves, and what are they doing, and where is their spend. And not only is the moat in terms of performance, system design, cost structure, geographical, scale. Not only are those kind of advancing and the gap is getting wider, but the gap's also getting wider in terms of, compute and spend. And it's really, at some point, it's going to come down to, okay, what is the utilization efficiency of that compute? And, I mean, I would be betting on Elon and Tesla in this situation in terms of, just if you look at the model that they do with their factories in terms of utilization and efficiency, and then you take that same leadership and map it towards what they're doing here. Anyway, it's just one thing I wanted to call out on that. This is a good discussion. I did ask Tesla Scope to come up, and I appreciate the work you do and your posts about FSD and deployment. Do you have any kind of updates you may have? I'm catching you off guard, just in terms of deployment of 12.5.3 and anything you want to call out in terms of hardware 4 or 3 cars? Tesla Scope.
Yes. So today we're
Thanks.
first seeing obviously the release of it on hardware 3 and hardware 4. So all vehicles made all the way from back to 2018 will be eligible for this. Initially, I think it's going to start in the United States, and we should be able to see it expand to other countries pending approval. Any countries that already have access to Smart Summon should automatically be able to get access to this, because it doesn't really necessarily add much yet. It just unlocks a much more performant model. And I see, especially with Elon's statement just minutes ago, I think that we should see continuous waves happening, even if not later today, hopefully within the next couple of days. And if not, all vehicles that are eligible should be upgraded to this by the end of this month. So just a little bit more of a wait, but things are happening very quickly. Most vehicles are going to have access to actual Smart Summon, the newer builds of full self-driving, and I think this little bit of a divide between kind of the vehicles still remaining on 12.3.6 that will soon be a thing of the past. So a lot of really great news up in the air.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think if I didn't see a breaking news headline today, but I mean, really, the breaking news is that hardware 3 and hardware 4 cars are getting the same software release in parallel. And so that there must have been a huge development on the Tesla side. And Omar was speaking to that earlier, but I just reiterating that for people who have joined more recently. I think that's one of the biggest updates today, besides just enabling this capability, enabling this functionality, is that hardware 3 and 4 cars are now getting the same 12.5.3 release concurrently, and it'll be interesting to see now the actual side by side performance. I had one question, either for Omar or Tesla Scope. Do you need an FSD subscription to have Summon working? Does anybody know that?
Yes, you need FSD for Summon.
Okay. I know that was that was a question. I thought about it, I'm like, I don't.
Enhanced autopilot might work too if you have that.
Okay. Got it. First off,
Through the API, we can see, especially recently, if a vehicle is subscribed actively to FSD, or if it's purchased it, or if they still have just EAP. So once the update goes out to more vehicles, I would even go as far as just to clarify even what Elon said is, all vehicles should be getting access to it. I think once we have data to see if vehicles with just EAP are still getting it as well, then through the release notes, we'll obviously know that for certain, but it should be a good chance of that.
awesome. And just to cut in, obviously there's a great conversation happening here. Please follow the speakers. They're doing a lot of work themselves. They're providing a lot of great information, and they know what the hell they're talking about. So great insights from everyone up here. You should follow them if you're not already doing that.
Yeah, it's been kind of like eye roll for the last month as they've worked on hardware 3 compatibility to hear people say, oh, hardware 3 is never getting an update. We're going to have to wait months after hardware 4. And just knowing, well, that's not technically how it works. So this event, getting the hardware 4 model or the same version running on hardware 3 as well, it's not just cool. It's not just good news for customers. It's also financially material. because most of the cars that are out there are hardware 3 cars. There are more hardware 3 cars that have been produced than hardware 4 cars so far. So if you can get the software out to both, that means any car since October 2016 that has hardware 2 or later can run it or can be upgraded to run it. And that means that the opportunity to monetize the fleet selling FSD for 8,000 or 99 a month, you can multiply that by a bigger number of cars. So it's a really good sign for the third quarter that they're doing this. And I think you will see a noticeable uptick in FSD subscriptions and purchases after this latest free trial round goes out.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Now Tesla has 2 points they can connect because they had an FSD free trial in, I believe, April/May. And that was on the, 12.1 or 12.3 series. And now they're running it off of this 12.5 series, which is markedly better. So now they can connect 2 points and say, I had a free trial, and here was the subscription uptick after the free trial. Now they're running the free trial again. What's that uptick? And it'll be interesting to see if there's any data that they can publish as a result. Great call out. Bringing up other speakers. Is there any other comments from the speakers on staff or on the that are up as speakers? Any other things to call Tesla Scope?
One other really important detail, I think, is that historically there's always been the complaints about the FSD branch has kind of been held back. So we will typically see new features going out to kind of the newer vehicles first, and then eventually a lot of the older vehicles will get access to those features. Tesla has been really listening to comments about that. So kind of building upon what Omar said about how it's so important for new vehicles, the moment you take delivery to be able to experience these brand new builds of FSD. That's why, at least this month and kind of going forward, there's going to be a lot more of a focus on making sure that the latest builds are always ahead of the production branch, so that the second that those vehicles are able to update, there's no holding back. There's no withholding of new features. That includes, great new functionality for your vehicles, but also security updates. Those are all going to be streaming to your vehicles sooner than they have in the past, and I think that's a very, very big step forward.
Great. Yeah, that's a great call out. Thank you. Ethan, I know you were asked to speak. Do you have anything for just a quick question for anyone?
Hey guys, it's Ethan. Wasn't sure if anyone saw, but Elon just tweeted about the Ask Go on wide release next week.
Cool.
Great. Everyone's getting some ass.
Yeah.
Thanks for that call out, Ethan. Appreciate it. Anything else from the speakers? We'll probably close the call in 5 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
5 weeks from 10/10.
I heard a couple speakers. I know I heard Omar. We'll talk about 10/10 in a second. What do you got, EVDC? Got a question?
I was doing a lot of mistakes.
Do you have a question or a statement?
And
I think your connection is lagging quite heavily there.
Learns much more. And the next time it doesn't make the mistake at the intersection, if there's like an obstacle or whatever.
Yeah, we're having trouble hearing you.
And
so apologize for that.
Really
Maybe try to come up.
They're constantly learning and they're improving.
All right. Yep. Cool. Yeah, so 10/10 is rapidly approaching. We're probably, getting in that window. You never know when Tesla does invites for these things. I know Bloomberg published some information. I guess they've been fairly good at getting some intel. And they published some information in terms of, where Tesla may be holding this event. So yeah, we're getting closer and closer. You can tell Tesla was kind of targeting the 12.5 release for 8.8. So I'm wondering between now and 10/10, what they have in store. Obviously, they've been advancing the 12.5 series and adding all this functionality. And it looks like, actual smart summon was a key component of it. But I don't know if anybody else has any other comments on 10/10. But really, this could be I think one of the bigger presentations for, I've watched, all of Tesla's presentations probably for the last, since the Model S unveiling. And, again, you can tell it's I'll be nice. You can tell it's an engineering company that approaches these events, as an engineering company. And sometimes these events are really cool, and Tesla really tries to do a good job. But in terms of like the delivery of this moment, this is a moment that honestly it changes the auto industry. EVs themselves, Tesla changed the auto industry with EVs. They made an EV that everybody liked and wanted to be inside of, and that didn't have any compromises on performance like the Model S. So they were the first to do that and then get it to be something that's profitable. And now of course they did it for a lower cost offering for the Model 3 and kind of made it mass market. And now's the time to have the fully software defined vehicle, and not only in terms of internal controls, but actually the vehicle that drives itself. And it honestly changes the ownership model of vehicles. So it's a big moment. It'll be interesting to see how they present that moment, and they present what that means, both to like how does it affect people's lives, but also like what is the economics of this, and what does it look like. I don't know if anybody has any comments on 1010 and how close we are.
Jeff, I think you're bang on in terms of like this is a totally new environment, or they're creating a brand new product. I don't think that Wall Street or investors understand or comprehend how impactful this is. This isn't, Tesla has already dominated in all the matrix, how they can manufacture a better car more profitably than anybody else on the planet. And now they've moved on because they've mastered that. And now they're creating this entirely new service, new product, new service, whatever you want to call it. I want to point out, though, to investors that, in my opinion, I think that a lot of people are going to miss out. So I don't know if we're going to see the stock rally. I doubt it. But it's going to be one of these things that people will wake up a year or two later and go, holy shit, I wish I recognized that was a moment. And here we have Jeff letting everybody know that this is revolutionary and this is something that we've never seen before. So get ready for it. So as Tesla investors, we should sit back and expect something significant and enjoy it, but don't expect the stock to go up. And if I can just comment also from a market perspective is August, September are really bad months. Plus we're leading into an election, which is pretty volatile. So I would suggest that people not worry too much about the stock price of Tesla over the short term, meaning the next few months. But from what we've seen just today, massive outperformance of Tesla in the market when things were down horrendously. People want to own this stock, and we think that big institutions are saying, hey, this is an AI play and it needs to be owned in the portfolio, and everybody is underweight. But yeah, 1010, huge event, and I don't think that people appreciate how significant this is.
Yeah, this is really, I think, the biggest event since the Model 3 unveil. It's really about what comes next after the Model 3. And the choice of the Warner Brothers Studios is really interesting because if you've ever taken a Warner Brothers studio tour or Universal Studios studio tour, you've seen the kind of fake facade cities they have. They have the potential to do a demo of a real vehicle without steering wheel and pedals. And I was thinking, okay, maybe in 40 days we're going to see a ride in the backseat of a Tesla. Then I get out of the shower yesterday and get this software update notification. And last night I sat in the backseat of my Tesla and drove me around a parking lot. And as I was driving around that parking lot, I thought, this feels totally natural, even more natural than a Waymo in some sense. I think this demo is going to be an absolute hit if they give demo rides at the event. I think no matter how much experience you have with self-driving cars and self-driving systems, for people in attendance there, it'll be the most lifelike, most human-like self-driving that they've ever experienced, bar none.
How do we get invites?
There'll be a shareholder lottery. So you register on the IR portal, one Tesla share you have equals one chance to win a ticket.
Yeah. So yeah, again, in terms of like what's going to happen in that event, I think it's exciting. Again, and there's always been kind of mixed reactions in terms of sentiment, before, during and after some of these events. And again, everybody has to make their own decisions and be responsible for their own decisions and what they do, because none of this stuff is entirely predictable. But we do like to talk about the business. We do like to talk about what's occurring in the business and what's sometimes it's not readily obvious, but it's all public information, and try to make sense of it. And that's the dialogue you see happening here with the speakers. We'll take one or two more questions and we'll call it a session. David, you got your hand up.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hey.
Yeah, I was just thinking today, I don't know if you guys have gotten that word, but it seems like NVIDIA dropped quite a bit on the basis that it seems they're losing steam from potential buyers like Tesla that have gotten basically their hardware now. They're not going to potentially buy anything very soon, and instead they're going
I
to
don't
start.
think that's the case. I don't
You
think
don't
that's
think
why
so?
NVIDIA dropped. No, I think and again, everybody should do their own research on
Got
why
subpoenaed by
stocks.
the DOJ. That might
Yeah,
have had something to do with it.
yeah, and that could have leaked. Who knows?
Yeah.
First day of trading in the month. I mean, there's all kinds of things, that could be happening. But it's not that people think that everybody's buying some sort of new approach to AI hardware all at once. I don't think that's the case. It's an interesting thought, but I don't think people woke up on Tuesday with that.
Could be, yeah. I'm just, it keeps going in my mind because I think it will be a perfect shift where the market starts to realize that, okay, now that we have the hardware, where do we get the money from? And obviously Tesla's at the forefront there with this event coming up on 10/10, that the market will say, oh, well, this is where the NVIDIA chips are actually making money, not just OpenAI and asking questions online, but actually on the street, a car driving or a Tesla bot.
Yeah. Tesla has the edge AI solutions, whether it's going to be with robotaxis and then eventually in the future with Optimus, where you can actually see AI hardware and software, going into and creating, just massive industries. So yeah, it's a real life use case. And the cool thing about Tesla is they're not, they can do this vertically integrated. So they're literally doing the silicon design for inference, and now they're even working on, the training side of it, and they own the end-to-end stack. So you think about timing, you think about, the whole customer experience end to end versus like disaggregating this across multiple partners. There's cycle time implications of doing that. There's cost structure implications of doing that. And quite frankly, it's hard to get all these companies on the same, the same page from a priority perspective. Like who does NVIDIA has announced that they have 80 partners in self-driving. Well, who sets, how are those priorities set? And so anyway, Tesla being, at the consumer all the way, back into the base silicon layer and how everything's designed. I think there's a huge advantage they have. Let's hit a couple of hands. Thanks for bringing that up, David. I saw Praveen first, then Xander, who's the co-host,
Hey,
raising his hand.
so I have seen videos of the actual smart summon, and they are quite impressive. However, did anyone get a chance to test actual smart summon on more complex scenarios, like like angled, slanted parking spots, or maybe like a underground parking garage or multi-level parking garages?
Yeah, we talked about that right before you joined. It came out at midnight last night, and our trusted early access testers went out and got the videos they could get. But we have people now going out. We had somebody on the call earlier that's literally going out to a super busy Costco parking lot now to start. So I think you're going to start seeing those over the next day or two. Answer your
Believe
question.
me, anything you can imagine, someone's going to test it.
So
Yeah.
for 1010, like why? The question I was wondering is why, right? Like, why did they choose, if that is true, Warner Brothers? Do they need people? Are they trying to set up a predictable, situation where passengers can or people can cross the streets, or are they trying to throw more variables in to show it off as opposed to an uncontrolled space? What do you guys think?
Well, first off, they need an event space. So they need a big event space. There's not tons of them in LA. I mean, well, there are obviously, but a sound stage at a movie studio is kind of the perfect space for doing a presentation of this kind, especially where you have an auto unveil where you might have cars being driven in and out. I mean, the Cybercab may not be the only car we see here. They've also got some new affordable models that are supposed to be starting production in just a few quarters now. So maybe we'll get some info on those as well. But it's kind of just a good place for a presentation. Then, being able to drive around the back lot, you need a exemption from NHTSA to drive a car without steering wheels and pedals on public roads today. But in the movie studio back lot, you don't need any permit. You can actually give demo rides today in a car without a steering wheel, and that's perfectly legal. And if there's a movie set there, you could even make it look just like you're driving to a real city, really give people the sense of what it's going to be like. It's obviously not as good as driving on real public roads and demonstrating that. That would be a much more impressive demo compared to driving on a movie studio lot. But it's one more step in that direction.
Got it. Great. Okay, we're gonna hit a couple more, and then we're gonna call it Sat. Hey, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I just think it's similar to the solar roof tiles, just having it in a controlled space. But also, I don't think the robotaxi's hindrance is the technology. I'll always say I think it's the regulations. So it makes sense what Ormer was saying. I was gonna say what Ormer was gonna say about the Warner Brothers Studios, very controlled area that you can do it in. But also, even if you have a realtor's show, even for houses, a demo house, the model house gets sold at the very end. So even if they're in a public area, you're going to have regulation issues. But I think going forward, even if robotaxi is going to be good, it's always going to be working with the local governments of every city or every state and every country in the future. So I think the hindrance is bigger over there, and then having them understand technology. So I'm excited for the event, but I think the hindrance that I see isn't the technology.
Yeah, I think this is where in terms of geographical approval, this is going to be where demand meets data. And I think, Tesla is trying to do obviously both at the same time. They're trying to make a great product where the data shows that this is safer and a better experience to have machines driving than humans. And of course, they're trying to create the demand in the marketplace. So you've got people, putting pressure on regulators saying, I want a safer experience. I want a better experience. This is where autonomy and driving is going to. You please, get our region approved. So I think Tesla's trying to create that, that tension, not so much tension, but they're trying to create that competitive tension of making a product that's really good. And they've got work to do to get there. There's risks in all this. So first of all, I think we're going to close it here. I want to thank the co-host Herbert and Xander, and thank you to all the speakers. Holmar's tremendous input. Simon, Tesla Scope. Thank you, Sat, Ethan, for breaking in with some of that information. David, for your questions. And Adrian, thanks for for coming up and joining us as well, and then all the other speakers. Sorry if I didn't get to you again, but thanks to everybody listening as well. We do this every Tuesday at 5 o'clock Central, and again, follow the speakers and the host. And thanks for your time. Drop any comments in there what we can do better. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks.
Go get some masks.
That too.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.